I think, is the people who are going to make those decisions, those political level decisions. It's not accidental that that great book, England in the 7 Years' War of 1907, which Beatrice highlighted in the talk, one of the first people he sent a copy to was the Secretary of State for War, Richard Burden Haldane, a fellow lawyer who would end up as Lord Chancellor. And the book is used to put an argument about the nature of British strategy as a maritime, expeditionary, amphibious strategy. And the purpose of sending it to Haldane is to make sure that Haldane, as the responsible minister, shapes the army to serve that end rather than following the wishes of many of his uniformed advisors, which would have been towards a more normative continental approach to the army. And Haldane's response, which is very quick, is that he's read the book and he has his staff working on it to develop what will become the British Expeditionary Force. That's where Corbett is absolutely critical. His day job, as far as he has to work, he's unbelievably rich, so he doesn't have to do any work at all, but he does, is teaching mid and senior level naval officers how to interact with civilian politicians, how to think about war in a coherent way. But his other job is to operate at that higher level to get into the decision-making of the British state. He's also a member of the great think tank of the Edwardian era, the Coefficients, where he's talking to Haldane, Earl Grey, the Foreign Secretary, and others. So he's mixing in the very place where those decisions will be made in a country where the civilians will always have the final say. And the problem he identifies, and it came out, I thought, very, very well in the lecture, is that the civilians don't have either the skill set or the linguistic ability to have that debate with the military. What's happened since Clausewitz's day, since Napoleon's day, is that military professionalism has created its own rhetoric. And that's not a rhetoric that liberal civilians in England are engaging with. They may be in other countries, but when we get to the outbreak of the First World War, the Liberal cabinet literally has no idea how soldiers think, and they have no real idea what strategy should be. They have abdicated that responsibility through a very long period of peace. And Corbett's attempt to make sure they had the language and the intellectual equipment to have that debate ultimately fails. The decision-making at the very beginning of the First World War reveals that the Liberal cabinet may have read Corbett's book, but they certainly haven't either understood it or internalized it, and they allow control of policy to drift away. Moltke won the argument in 1914 against the Bismarcks because the Bismarcks of Britain in 1914 had no understanding of the business of war. Bismarck certainly did understand war, and he understood why it needed to be controlled. 1914 British Liberal cabinet doesn't do that. I was very struck reading Corbett's diary that he doesn't make much of this failure of decision-making, but he's going to spend the rest of his life trying to explain what went wrong, how British strategy was misdirected in the First World War, and how it should have been conducted. Because his job from 1914 until 1922, when he died, is to write the official history of British grand strategy.